Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the part 1 of Journey Towards Zero Waste Conference. This session's topic will be on sustainable packaging in medical applications. I'm Kim Neo, the Marketing Communications Manager of Oliver Healthcare Packaging, and I'll be your moderator today. Brief announcements before we begin. This presentation is brought to you by Oliver Healthcare Packaging, the leader in sterile barrier packaging for medical device and pharma industry, in collaboration with Singapore Manufacturing Federation and Packaging Council of Singapore. Oliver Healthcare Packaging and its affiliates are not responsible or liable in any manner for any content provided in this presentation or in relation to comments made and discussion held during the question and answer session. Although we provide examples of products and processes that have worked and are in use today, each customer and end user is still required to do their own third-party testing and verify the effectiveness before using sterile barrier system in their own processes. Secondly, this webinar is designed to be interactive. At the bottom of the screen, you'll be able to chat and raise questions that relate to the content of the presentation. And now to this presentation. Discussing today's topic is Dr. Aldin Vedlich. Aldin is the General Manager of Southeast Asia for Oliver Healthcare Packaging based on Singapore. With over 15 years of experience in private equity and publicly held companies, spanning from business development, marketing, mergers and acquisition and strategy, and general profit responsibility, he brings a multidisciplinary perspective to strategy planning and execution. Aldin has also spent over 6 years in academia, facilitating courses and lectures for graduate level courses in sustainable business strategies, sustainability, operation management and strategy, as well as international business, international monetary theory, and supply chain for the undergraduate level. Aldin graduated from MIT with a postgraduate degree in supply chain. He received his doctorate in finance and strategy from Capella University and earned his MBA and BBA at Devendorf University. Now I'll turn it over to Aldin to begin.
Thank you, Kim. And welcome everybody to today's session on sustainable packaging and medical applications. So a couple of items on today's topic. We'll talk a little bit about sustainability and specifically around the triple bottom line. So this is really where a lot of the seminal works on sustainability stem from. And if you look around today, depending on the organizations that you're dealing with, they might be looking at 4 or 5 bottom line items where they've integrated and added, additional variables to their sustainability strategy. For us, we're going to go back to the roots and the cores. And again, for the sake of time, we'll try to keep it to really these 3 elements. So we'll provide a little bit of a framework around the environment that we're faced with in medical applications. So we'll provide some trends and changes that we're seeing in the industry overall. And then within that context, we'll provide you guys with some examples on what hospitals and medical device and pharmaceutical companies are using today, and then what Oliver has done to change, improve, and better the overall use of medical packaging in this space. All right, so global sustainability issues are quite broad-reaching. Nowadays, if you ask somebody, what they think when they think sustainability or sustainability issues, a lot of these type of pictures come to mind. Oceans filled with a variety of different plastics. In medical, it's a little bit different. Really what we're mostly concerned is plastics that are maybe potentially biocontaminated as they have also been showing up in a variety of different landfills. And, our ability to minimize or completely eradicate the use of those, or at least somewhat effectively change that, is really what the topic of discussion is today. So the challenges with some of the items seen in medical packaging sustainability is really all related to biocontamination. So if you look at a recent study done by the Practice Green Health Organization, in the U.S. healthcare sector alone, today about 14,000 tons of waste is generated each day. And they estimate that somewhere between 20 to 25% of this waste is from plastic packaging. When you look at just a simple procedure like a hysterectomy, on average, they're generating about 10 kilograms of plastic waste just from that procedure alone. So for us, we have a large responsibility, to the overall environment and all of our stakeholders, including our employees and the communities that we work in. Our challenge is that plastics have really revolutionized healthcare. They're low cost and easy to process. It's very easy to sterilize these, which is very important, again, in healthcare. And, one of the best attributes of plastics that we've seen is that some of them can even be modified with coatings to make them more resistant to microbes. So this is, just again, a little bit of context around, biocontamination and the fact that it's really hard for us to recycle or try to implement typical sustainability procedures in the healthcare sector where most of this waste is actually incinerated. When you take a step back and you look at the overall medical device value chain, it gets even more complex because now we start to add regulatory considerations into the development of a medical device. And so the first three elements of the value chain on the left, it starts at the R&D stage with the development of a prototype, product development, regulatory approval. Then you get into component sourcing and manufacturing. And finally, for a company like Oliver, we're kind of in the assembly stage where we're developing and designing the packaging, the material selection, the design, and what we do ultimately affects sterilization. We do play an important role in that plastic waste and usage. And so we'll provide some context around what we've done there to help reduce and mitigate some of these things. When you look at specifically regulations, so for those companies that are doing business in established markets, these are usually FDA or there's some regulating body that governs how packaging has to work. It's considered part of the device because it's primary packaging. We look to ISO Part 1 and ISO Part 2. Really, these two sections of 11607 address the packaging design, performance, and stability. And they also focus on the process validation at the medical device level. So what that actually means is that the regulatory arms want the medical device companies to prove that the materials they're going to be using abide by all the standards that have been implemented. And these are pretty rigorous. And as a result of that, medical device companies and their ability to just easily move into non-established materials or materials that might have been used prior to that is highly unlikely or very, very slow. So normally in this case, medical device companies that are already in a tight deadline to get a product launched are always going to go back to time-tested materials, which makes our job as a supplier into the space even more difficult. The final item, and there's quite a few, but the final item we'll touch on as well is shelf life. So most of the materials that we provide have been time-tested. We know that they work, and we know that they can sustain 1, 2, 3, 5, and in some cases 10 years of shelf life, meaning when the product is assembled, we provide the packaging and it's sterilized, even post-sterilization, that device with that sterile barrier can sit on a shelf in a hospital for up to 10 years. And when the nurse or physician go to use it in an operating or a procedure, there's absolutely no issues with that device. And then the last trend just around the market development and how healthcare is changing. So in addition to the fact that, we have regulation and we have, growing standards in what we need to provide to medical device companies, we're also seeing an increase in healthcare spending. It's actually growing faster. In 2013 to 2017, the growth was about 2.9% year over year. This number is now estimated to be around 5.4%. Globally through 2022. A large portion of that is driven really by a few major variables. One of the variables is the fact that life expectancies are continuing to increase from an average of about 73.5 years of age to 74.4 years of age by 2022. In addition to that, by 2022, about 670 million people are going to be over the age of 65. So we have an aging population that is requiring obviously more, they have more healthcare needs. The other element that is, changing, or a trend that we're seeing, is that communicable diseases are on the decline. Again, this is driven by the fact that they have better access to healthcare. There's improved living conditions and better sanitations are all helping drive some of those down, but again, increasing healthcare spending overall. The last item is really related to urbanization, or the fact that people are really trending towards more inactive lifestyles. So what we're seeing here is obesity is on the rise, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and cancers. And again, these do drive healthcare spending further up. So these are some of the really headwinds if you consider minimizing the use of packaging or plastics, as we alluded to earlier. As people continue to age and they have better access to healthcare, we're going to see more and more use of plastics. All right. So to provide you guys with just a little bit of context around the typical packaging that is used in hospitals, we'll just briefly touch on the fact that most hospitals or medical device or pharma companies use pouches, trays, and lids. And really, pouches are used for a lot of different products. If they're using syringes, catheters, they could be in stents, they could be in some kind of wound care dressings. And these materials can vary from paper, Tyvek, to film and foils. The other, product that's used quite commonly is this product called a tray and lid. So the trays are usually, a PET-G tray. So it's a very rigid tray. And usually these are used for orthopedic devices, knee replacements, maybe minimally invasive. And there's usually a Tyvek lid that has a very special adhesive. That adhesive allows it to seal to just about anything. It can be sterilized, and it can be, sitting on a shelf for a few years before use and still be, ready to use. Customers that are in high volume products are using, roll stock materials. So in this case, if you have a form, fill, seal type of application, you use a top web and a bottom web. You might be using paper, Tyvek, a film, or a foil, and you're automatically dropping the device in as you're sealing, cutting, and it's going out for distribution. So we do sell quite a bit of roll stock as well. I would say, in our industry, a newer product, which 20 years would be considered something more novel, are these clean cut cards and discs. We'll share a little bit about those and how those designs again help mitigate and minimize the use of multiple stereo barrier systems and components. And then lastly, cartons and shippers. So I briefly mentioned a little bit about the fact that there are adhesive coatings that go on materials. There's really only two coating technologies in the world today that are used for medical applications. One coating technology is called hot melt technology. These coatings are very specialized in the sense that they work with just about all of the sterilization modalities that are out there, even more rigorous sterilization modalities like autoclavable sterilization. What we've done also is there are some more sustainable sterilization modalities that are starting to enter the market, and we've tested our coatings with those, and they seem to be working well. So again, there's benefits in the type of adhesives that you're using as well in medical packaging, specifically related to sustainable sterilization modalities and how they affect the device as customers move away from ethylene oxide or some of the more traditional methods. Another coating technology that we have is called a water-based technology, and again, these technologies serve a different purpose. They're for more economical products. They have superior cold and flex and cold crash resistance. Again, these are all really important elements, depending again where your devices are going to be going to market and what the regulatory requirements are in terms of what you need to abide by and the type of tests that you need to conduct before you can launch your device. So normally during the design and development stage, our technical consultants would work with the engineers at our customers, and we would help them kind of introduce these to help either work with a new sterilization modality or an existing sterilization modality, but ultimately a new design, and make sure that they have the right product for form, fit, and function as the regulatory arms have set forth. So just to provide you with an example of the type of situations that we deal with, and again, if you consider the context of the industry that we're in, the fact that we can't necessarily introduce new materials, or if we do, the adoption rates are very low, or the fact that we can't necessarily change the regulatory landscape to where it's easier to introduce just about anything. So one example, I personally like is we have customers that make bone cement, and traditionally, and in some cases today, they might be in a factory, they make the bone cement, they put it into a Tyvek pouch. That Tyvek pouch then goes to a sterilizer. At the sterilization, they might be using ethylene oxide, gets sterilized. They then ship that back to the factory. At the factory, they, in a clean room environment, under certain conditions, they remove the bone cement and then they put it into a foil pouch, because that bone cement actually needs some type of moisture barrier. And then once it has that moisture barrier, they seal it, and then that goes into a hospital, sits on a shelf for some time, and then when the procedure is happening, the physician or the nurse can take that out and use it during the procedure. So what you can see here is a lot of steps. There's 2 systems being used, which means there's 2 validations that the medical device companies having to do. That requires a lot of resources and a lot of people. In addition to that, they have a additional step in their manufacturing process, which is removing the bone cement and putting it into another sterile barrier. And that is an issue because it can cause contamination. So those are all big no-nos. So what we developed is a pouch called the autoclavable disposable pouch. And what this does is at the bottom of the pouch, there's a Tyvek header. The Tyvek header allows the customer to put the bone cement in. They can seal it. It gets sterilized, so the gas can still pass through the Tyvek. And then when the sterilization is done, now you remember the step where they had to remove the bone cement and put it into another pouch. They don't have to do that anymore. They just seal the foil and they cut the Tyvek strip off. So we remove an entire sterile barrier system. And in addition to that, we remove an entire process step in the medical device manufacturer's overall operational process. These things look fairly simple, but they're actually quite complex. If you look at the actual structure of that foil, we provided a brief example just to give you, but it's got multiple layers that are in it. You can't really see when you look at it, but there's multiple layers, and they serve a different, they all serve a different purpose in terms of what it can seal to, the type of oxygen transmission rates and water vapor transmission rates that the foil will allow, because there's certain, again, regulatory standards that we have to hit. So there's all kinds of technology that's embedded into the system. And in addition to that, this particular product can even go through a very, very rigorous sterilization and still survive. Excuse me. So we'll talk a little bit about alternative systems as well. Really the goal here is to just give you guys an example on the type of alternatives that we're starting to introduce into the market that still abide and really improve on what regulation has been set forth on how medical device companies need to procure materials and what they need to do in terms of how they present them in an operating room. And we'll talk a little bit about just how they're cost effective, what they do. But just again, for the sake of time, we have a lot of products, but the products we'll highlight is just some here around our CleanCut cards and how they've worked. So driving sustainability through design, one example that I like a lot is these high density polyethylene CleanCut cards. They're 100% recyclable. They're biodegradable virgin resin. They really eliminate rigid or bulky trays. And, because they're flexible, it allows our customers to roll them up and fold them into a third. So now we're minimizing the total amount of space used, where if you're in a rigid tray or some kind of rigid system, you can't minimize or reduce that. You're taking up more shelf space in a hospital, and you're having to validate maybe more systems. The second element is the dispenser integrated system kit. So if you look at this one, it's called a dual hoop disc. So it allows medical device companies to add alternative sized catheters to a backer card. So in a normal process, what would have happened is the medical device company would have validated two different sterile barrier systems, each one for the different catheters. But in this case, they're actually just using one system. So again, it's all about reducing the total use of sterile barrier systems. It also protects the medical device. In a typical just standard pouch, you wouldn't see any protection in there. And it also improves the amount of sterilizations required, because you actually need one less sterilization, because now you have two systems in one. So those are all ways that we reduce either through this really novel designs, or reduce costs as a result of the fact that they don't have to sterilize as often. So we'll provide you guys with a quick video on how these cards are actually used. So here's an example of this is a tube that these are all designed. We have quite a few technical centers around the world, but these are designed at our technical center. So the device, it actually was rolled into a tube that we also developed. So that tube is now protected. There's a guide wire that went in, and there's a third element of the device that sits on the back. It's being folded in. So now again, this is an example of us losing less space. It's sealed at the end. And when it gets to an operating room, the nurse opens it up, rolls it out, and she can easily remove all the elements. So a total of 3 devices out of one system. And she can aseptically present it to the physician, which is something that is very important to our customers. Again, so smaller footprint means a lot of things. In our case, it reduces, we want to reduce packaging footprint by 20 to 30%. So it really has a lot of effects kind of down value chain. So one element is, as you can see from the top left picture, the overall space used with clean cut, with these clipless dispensers, is the overall space used is significantly less. There's a lot of, again, regulatory items in terms of using clips on a dispenser like that. We're not going to get into here today. From a transportation, perspective, you can see it's a lot smaller footprint. So ultimately for us, less volume and lower shipping weight means lower transportation costs, and those are all passed on to the medical device and pharmaceutical customers. So how do we measure outcomes? Again, we started the conversation with the triple bottom line. So for us, really, there's 3 elements. Can't go into all of them, but from an environmental perspective, it's all about reducing the total number of sterile barrier systems that are used. We want to provide compatible coatings for more sustainable sterilization modalities. We have over 44 coatings today that work in a lot of different applications. We want to have designs that keep products safe, secure, and sustain, really, or reduce the sterile barrier breach elements that, maybe a medical device company might be faced with. From an economic perspective, we want to reduce overall transportation costs. We want to improve the yield from sterilization, as they're sending those in, and then reduce overall packaging size and thus cost. Socially, we do a lot of things as an organization. If we think about it externally facing, we want to improve really the outcome of patients. So how do we provide nurses and physicians with, devices that are easily accessible? There's instructions that are printed. They can, safely and securely present, work with, and solve the more pressing needs there. Ultimately, how do we provide packaging that is safe, reliable, and aseptically presentable? And then, we want to continue to participate in community events, give back meaningfully, and hire, train, and develop our staff in a way that allows them to continue to grow and benefit from what we do. So that's all I have today, for today. I want to thank you guys for listening. I've provided my email for any additional questions that may come up. That's all I have, Kim.
Thanks, Eldin. All right, now we will begin the question and answer session. As a reminder, if you have a question, please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. And in the event that we did not get to your question, feel free to reach out to us on our website or email us at marketing@oliverhcp.com. So to begin, Eldin, can you talk a bit about the evolution of sterilization modalities and the impact more sustainable options will have on materials?
It's a very good question. So if we think about sterilization and medical device, really the two most predominant modalities have been gamma or radiation and ethylene oxide. As of 4 years ago, ethylene oxide and radiation were about 50-50 split in terms of market share. And under radiation, there's quite a few different radiation technologies you can use, like gamma or E-beam. And now, if we look at just the last two or 3 years, we're starting to see new sterilization modalities come to the market. And we see companies across the world. We've seen a few more recent examples where they're actually developing in-house sterilization capabilities that are really new and have no impact on the environment the way maybe a gassing sterilization like ethylene oxide would. So the impact of that on materials is, what we're going through, or what our engineers are going through, is we're testing to see, what materials are compatible and what are the implications of these changes, and what do we need to develop in terms of new material sciences that will help, drive that sustainable future in the sense of sterilization, while still adhering and exceeding the regulatory expectations. So that's what we're really dealing with today.
Thank you. Can you also share about the adoption of new materials and designs in hospitals or medical device companies?
All right, so the question is on new materials and designs in terms of adoption rates for hospitals and medical device companies. Again, this is another challenging item because a lot of our customers want time-tested materials. And so introducing any new materials can usually be a bit of a challenge. So usually we focus more on the design elements. So using materials that work, but then provide designs that still help them reach some of the goals that they're looking to reach.
Thank you, Eldin. How do you sustain effective patient safety while reducing material waste and improving sustainability?
That's another good question. So it is very hard to do. Again, I provided a few examples during the presentation, and one of the things that we invest in quite a bit is really developing our design technologies and techniques. We have a lot of designers that work at Oliver that are really focused on designing systems and looking at it from an end user perspective. So we have customer advisory boards. So we have a rotating schedule of customers that sits in an advisory board who we meet with on a regular basis. And these are representatives from the top, 100 medtech companies and others who then help us kind of consult. So we hear from them, we understand what their challenges are. We work with the nursing organizations so that we know, hey, like what are the nurses going through when they use our materials and our products? What are they challenged by? And then we feed that back into the R&D and a technical team. And from there, we try to develop designs and systems that really help address all of the issues that might be faced throughout the value chain. So we think that's the right approach. We have to keep listening to what customers need and what the industry needs. And again, while abiding and exceeding the requirements that the regulatory arms are setting forth.
Thank you, Eldin. In the interest of time, that will be the last question for our session today. Should you have additional questions or require assistance with your medical device packaging material needs, please feel free to contact Oliver Healthcare Packaging at marketing@oliverhcp.com. On behalf of SMF and Oliver Healthcare Packaging, I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you.